Hey guys, welcome to Frantic Woodwork. Today we're going to be building a table out of oak and some epoxy. Now this isn't something that I've ever done before in my life. I don't really work with wood tools very often at all, but I decided to make a YouTube video and also a YouTube channel based all around that. Now as you guys can see, I'm trying to manhandle this slab of oak onto this table right here, and I am struggling like crazy. I used an online calculator to figure out how heavy this wood was, and apparently it's anywhere from 40 kilos up to 60 kilos, which is almost what I weigh, so it was kind of tricky. Right here, I've got my Orbital Sander that I bought just for this project, and honestly, it worked out really well. You can see right here, I'm really bad with pointing the camera. It's going the wrong direction completely. Anyway, after doing that, I'm waiting around a little bit because I seen some clouds coming in, and I'm trying to psych myself up to carry this inside. And honestly, it took some work. Once the clouds had gone over and the sun was back out again, I decided to go ahead and get the wood back out. And this is me trying to build up the courage to put it on the table again. Honestly, it is so heavy, it's ridiculous. And realistically, maybe there should be 2 people carrying this thing. Not gonna lie. But anyway, all I'm trying to do right here is actually sand down the edges so that they are not as, I don't know, angry as they were before. So I'm just here sanding down the sides, and honestly it goes quite well. We get the sides pretty well sanded. The thing is though, this oak slab seems to have been maybe like strapped with something, and the straps dug in quite deep, which is kind of annoying. So yeah, that side was done, this side is not done, and I had to go ahead and try and sand this side as well. Realistically, there's probably some other tool I could have used to sand this down, but it worked out actually quite well, to be honest. It actually did the job really well, and I'm actually really pleased with it. The thing is, I was using 60 grit sandpaper, and maybe I should have been using maybe like a lower grit of sandpaper, like 40. So I have actually bought some 40 grit sandpaper for the sander for maybe next time if we decide to do another project. I don't know whether that's going to be the case or not. Here's Jimmy. This is my cat. And you will have seen Sparky, my dog, in the previous little bit as well. Let me know if you guys seen him. But anyway, this is us sanding down this side, and if you can see, there's like a little bit of a flat spot right there. That looks like it's actually being cut with a saw, and it's not really a bit of live edge, which is kind of annoying. However, I think if I sand it enough, and I like round it over a little bit, I think that can actually look like a live edge bit of wood, honestly. So I think that's something that we'll keep. There's not really too much else I need to say right now. So back over to live Maddie. Okay, so I managed to get the sides sanded down enough so that it won't actually splinter me and hurt me at this point. And I've decided that maybe it's a good idea in the middle of the night, because it's currently about 1 a.m., to pour some epoxy, and then I'm going to go to sleep, and in the morning, we'll wake up and we'll see what we've done. So, this right here is my epoxy that I'm using. It doesn't look particularly good. if I do say so myself, I could have probably designed that label in school. Yeah, so this is going to be kind of interesting. The epoxy I'm using is 1-to-1, so it's like this bit and this bit together. And we just hope for the best. I don't know how that's gonna go. Okay, so I don't know how much of this you guys will be able to see, but we got given these things, so we're probably gonna use those. We also got given these, which I believe are gloves, question mark? I think they're gloves. So we're gonna go ahead and put these nice gloves on. I'm sure they will be amazing. Oh, yeah. Oh. They come attached together. Beautiful. Okay, I'm going to shove these on, and then we're going to try and pour some epoxy. I ended up actually pouring the epoxy off camera because honestly, you guys have seen people pour things into jugs before. That's essentially all I did. And then I added some dye, and it worked out quite well. Okay, I've been mixing for quite a while now, and I think it's time. So, we're going to go ahead and chuck some of this in here. This seems like a really bad idea. The way I'm going to do it is I'm going to try and dribble it in. And then, like, push it, I guess? I don't know. I feel like this is a terrible idea. Alright, I'm just going to try and chuck loads of it in. I'm going to use the stick to actually try and drizzle it. Obviously, if I get it anywhere else, that's fine. This feels like it's too watery, but I could be wrong. I could be wrong. I've never really worked with resin very much before. I'm just going to chuck it in. We're going to hope for the best. So, clearly this isn't an epoxy river table. This is me just filling some cracks on top of this oak slab with some epoxy. Now, on the underside of this slab, there isn't actually any cracks, but I decided this side might actually look nicer anyway. I kind of like all the dimples and stuff in it, so, yeah, this is going to be an interesting slab. Okay, we've already got a leak. That's not good. That's not good. We got a leak underneath. Okay, that's fine. So yeah, we ended up with a bit of a leak. Essentially, all I was using was this blue tape to actually secure it, and now I realize that was a really bad idea. It was also a bad idea to have it sort of suspended in the air. Obviously, I don't have a table big enough to have this slab on top, so the epoxy ended up leaking through and sort of puddling inside of the tape that I applied, which is something that maybe next time I can remedy. Maybe. Okay, so at this point, we have a leak coming out of those guys. There's two cracks right there, one there and one there. That's not great. And then I've done this to the rest of the table. I haven't filled in the main crack in the center, and the main reason for that is because obviously we've had a leak here. I haven't used the right tape, let's be real. That is not the right tape for this job. Ignore everything that's going on in that corner. It's a bit of a mess, but ignore it. So yeah, we've got a lot of stuff going on here. Hopefully in the morning when we come back, that will be fine. What's the likelihood of that though? It's pretty low. We'll see what happens. Anyway, let's wait till the morning. So, in the morning, I decided to take off the tape. I should have probably recorded that, but it is what it is. And as you guys can see, I have a huge mess of epoxy underneath. Now, I got some chisels for my birthday, which, it was my birthday yesterday, which is quite nice, and actually really, really cool that we got chisels. But yes, I ended up having to chisel a bunch of epoxy off. And unfortunately, whilst I was doing this, I did chip a little bit of the wood off as well. So I decided from that point, I'm not going to chisel any more of it out. And I'm going to apply some duct tape to the bottom, which, it kind of works really well, but at the same time, I'm not sure. So you'll have to wait till later for that. Okay, so this may or may not be the way that we should be doing this, but it's the way that I'm going to attempt to do it. So, last night we had some issues with, let's say leakage. And essentially all that happened was, while I was pouring into the crack, it actually went through the crack into the bottom where I'd put the sellotape, or the masking tape, and it sort of just pooled there, and the tape held it in. But it wasn't holding it into the actual crack, so it just came straight through. All the other things actually seemed okay, except a little bit has broken my desk. Not my desk, my table that I'm working on. It's pulled it off. Interesting. Anyway, what I'm going to do now is flip this desk back over, and I'm going to pour epoxy again, and hope this time we have no leaks. And to be honest, I've added so much duct tape to this. Hopefully it's all fine. Some of it is bumpy, but that's because there's actually some bumps underneath it. Not necessarily that it's coming up, if that makes sense. Although that bit is a little bit loose. Anyway, we're going to see what happens. So hopefully it goes well. Right, it's time to actually start pouring this again. And this time we're actually going to be pouring a lot more epoxy. And I'm going to care a lot less about how I'm putting this on, because honestly, I'm actually kind of secure in the fact that I've added loads and loads and loads of duct tape to the bottom of this thing, which is going to help me out massively. Unfortunately, we do end up with the problem again of the epoxy pooling underneath, and that's mainly down to the fact that it's not actually on a solid surface. It's just sort of suspended in the air, and I was hoping that the duct tape was strong enough to keep it still, but that wasn't necessarily the case. But yeah, I go up and down this thing actually quite a few times. I pour a bunch of epoxy over bits that I've already poured epoxy on, but that's fine. And all of this will have to be sanded off afterwards. Now that's not something I've actually done at the time of recording this bit, so yeah, it's going to be kind of interesting figuring that out. Now, if you guys are wondering how wide this slab is, it is actually 65 centimeters or so wide at the widest part. And the closest big wide belt sander to me that I can actually use is 600 mil. So we're out by a little bit, so it won't actually fit in that machine. So I'm going to have to do it all myself, which sucks. But yeah, I go over this a few times. I actually let this settle a bunch, and then I have to pour another cup of this because it actually soaks in loads into this big crack in the middle. So later on in the night, I actually ended up making myself some more epoxy, chucking it in, mixing it a little bit in the gaps so that it actually all like secured together, and it actually worked out quite well. Now overall, I haven't even used a liter of epoxy yet, so hopefully I don't have to spend any more money on epoxy, but we'll wait and see, I guess. Alright, so it was time to actually flip the table over again and try and remove all of this duct tape. Now, honestly, this is actually very, very easy, and I was hoping that there wouldn't be much actual epoxy on the bottom. Unfortunately, there was actually at that end. You can see there's a little bit of a pool, but I ended up with a huge roll of duct tape, and it turned into a huge ball. This right here is me trying to sand down the epoxy, and honestly, this did take a very, very, very long time. Epoxy is obviously harder than the wood is, and I maybe should have used a lower grit of sandpaper. I should have probably used about 40. At the minute, I think I was using 80. And this took up a lot of sandpaper. I had to use so much, which is pretty crazy. But yeah, here I was just going over all of it, because I've never really sanded it before, in terms of sanding epoxy. But after sanding it for a little while, he ended up just doing one side, and that ended up being a lot better. As you can see, the bit at the bottom is done, and then I started doing some pulls at the top, and then went back to the middle again. And yeah, there's just sanding. And in fact, that's pretty much all I did during the build of this table, which is insane. Something that I do actually want to mention is that this sander actually stopped sort of working. This is my first project, and I feel like the sander should have lasted a little bit longer than my first project. Essentially, it was on speed 6, and it just kept slowing down all the way to 0, and then zooming straight back up, which is really, really weird to deal with. Also, this is Jimmy, my cat. Again. I don't know if you guys have already seen him in this video, not sure. Anyway, back to sanding. There is a hell of a lot more to do, so I'm gonna leave you guys with a little bit of a sanding montage, and then I'll be back with you guys to talk about what we've got. Thinking about it a little bit, I was probably actually putting a little bit too much pressure on the sander, so next time I won't do that. Okay, so a lot of sanding later, and we're back inside with the wood. What I'm going to do is take this pencil, and I'm going to essentially outline areas where we need to fill in a little bit more, because at the minute there's some dips in these, and they need fixing. So I'm going to go around and circle a bunch of these, and hopefully I can fill them all in. There's quite a lot of them. Okay, so that seems good to me. There isn't actually as many of them as I previously thought, but we're gonna have to mix up like a tiny bit of epoxy and just shove it in each of these. I don't necessarily think it needs to be black. I think we can just fill it in whatever color. I think clear will be fine. And that should work out fine. The next few parts coming up are gonna be us pretty much finishing up the table, to be totally honest with you guys. I ended up pooling a little bit of epoxy on top just so that I could sand it down again to try and get it level. And this is how not to use a circular saw. This is my first time using a circular saw, and this thing right here is actually almost as old as I am, but this is the first time it's being used. Also, you can see that there is some gap underneath that log I was using, or that plank I was using. That's because the wood is slightly bowed, and I had some issues here. It was actually moving whilst I was cutting, which is definitely not what you want. This right here is obviously the legs we're going to be using. These are some steel crossbeam legs. It's just some X's. I think they look pretty cool, and I currently have them on my desk that I own right now. This is what I'm recording at right now. Anyway, I draw around the edge because I'm thinking I need to sand this down a little bit for these legs to, I don't know, fit snug and also be flat. So here's the level that I was using, and you can see it's off. I went to my parents' house and I stole my dad's sander, as you can see, and essentially all I'm trying to do is flatten out where the legs are. So I go over it a few times, I sand and sand and sand, as you do in these projects apparently. Sanding is like the most important thing, and you know what, it actually worked out quite well, although I didn't do it on the other side, and the main reason for that is because I figured the legs would actually fit on alright anyway. They're not the full width of the log, they're not the full width of the slab, I should say, so it actually worked out fine. But yeah, this sander is kind of fun to use. It uses, or gets rid of a bunch of material. I go over it again with the Orbital Sander just to, I guess, remove some of the ridges that it created. And now the underside of the table looks pretty good, actually. It looks quite nice. Anyway, we sanded this a bunch. I moved the camera apparently whilst I'm sanding. Pretty nice. And yeah, we end up actually putting like loads of tools on top of the slab in a second because I want the legs to fit. Anyway, we circle the holes. This turned out to actually be an issue, and the bolts didn't fit. They actually did not fit. So, you'll see what I did about that very soon. But yeah, so let's go ahead and drill these holes. This is where the threaded inserts are gonna go. There's 4 of them. I go over and do the last 2, obviously, in a second. But let's sand that down first, obviously. And then let's see if a threaded insert will fit. No. So I had to come back over, try and drill this hole bigger for these threaded inserts, and see if the threaded inserts would fit in those holes. Apparently, these holes were also slightly too small, so I had to go through again and re-drill the holes again, which, to be fair, is quite an easy thing to do. And then I needed to see if the threaded insert would fit. And actually, on these ones, it totally would, but I wanted to get a drill piece, or drill bit, so that I could actually put them in. Oh, wait, actually, maybe it didn't fit. Anyway, this is me putting the threaded insert in with the hex key, obviously, and then I wanted to use the drill. So I went over, got a piece that would fit inside there, and attached it to the drill, and brrr, unfortunately my battery was running out, so it didn't bury it, but that's fine. It got it in far enough for me to do this. Ugh. My hands were wrecked after that, by the way. But yeah, sanded it off, and that was fine. This right here is what I had to do to actually fit the bolts through the holes. I got a metal bit, drill bit, and started drilling all the holes through, and it actually worked out quite fine. And then this is where you'll see me actually try and attach the legs, and it not fit. So I ended up doing a little bit more metal work than I was expecting, and I absolutely destroyed the holes with another drill bit. Unfortunately, I didn't record that because I was stressed out, but yeah. I accidentally didn't record the finish, but essentially what I used was some wax, and I just waxed it down, cleaned it off with that cloth right there, then waxed it down again, cleaned it off again, and that is the finish we've got. Honestly, I think this table looks really, really good. The only thing is, and the main reason that I think this is going to be hard to sell, is this right here is actually very ugly. I like it, because I think it shows the character of the woods, but I think that is actually a very off-putting thing, whereas these look absolutely fantastic. They actually look really cool. If you look all the way through the wood, it looks really, really nice. The thing is, there is still a few pits in this, as you can see. They're not actual pits, they're more just like sawdust that's been stuck in there. But the table has finished off actually so nicely. Like, really, really nice. And the legs that we've used as well, the X legs, they just work. Obviously, I could have maybe built some, but as my first project, just shoving some legs on the desktop sort of worked out for me. I quite like it. Anyway, that is where we're going to leave today's video. Obviously, there's a bunch of mistakes that I've made in this video. Maybe messing with a circular saw whilst also having the wood move around underneath it was definitely not a good idea. And I agree with that. It's probably not something that I should have done. However, it ended up actually working out, and we did cut the angle that we wanted to, which, you know what, is fine. The desk, I don't even know what dimensions it even is anymore. It started at about 180 by 65 by, I don't know, maybe like 6 centimeters deep, which is, you know, a decent sized desk. And honestly, I might use it for myself. But anyway, thank you guys very much for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.